We help young adults find and build friendships by connecting over social plans.
Butter has already hit 10,000 users and now it's gearing up to launch across Australia.
We want to create the world where every in-person interaction is built on Butter. I would always find that every time I moved cities, I'd start from scratch. I'd start to build that community again. I did try Bumble for Friends, but they didn't really work for me. I knew that I wanted to ship quickly and iterate. You can build a product, but who's going to use it if you can't see it out and get people to hear about it?
Quick thing before we get started, we have a lofty goal this year of hitting 1,000 subscribers in order to help more people build really great companies. So if you enjoy the content, learn something new, the best way to support us is by subscribing. Okay, let's get into it. Thank you, Sam, for joining me today on Founders in Motion. So just to set the stage, what are you building with Butter and why should everyone download it?
Thanks for having me, for starters. Very exciting. So I'm Sam. I'm the founder of Butter. Butter is the app to hang out with new friends. So essentially, we help young adults find and build friendships by connecting over social plans. So think weeknight dinners, going for a run, grabbing a coffee, those kind of everyday interactions.
You've moved cities in your 30s, suddenly making friends feel really awkward. And you try Bumble BFF, meetups, and all these networking type groups. What was missing from all those interactions?
Yeah, so I was moving a lot from my late teens, really, up until my mid-20s. I'd moved cities 6 times. I would always find that every time I moved cities, I'd start from scratch. I'd start to build that community again. I'd start to have a social life, and then I'd have to up and move again. And I would find that kind of, consistent change really frustrating, the consistent rebuilding. But then on top of that, I was evolving and changing really quickly. Like that time of our life, our values change, our priorities, our goals, all that type of thing. I did try Bumble for Friends. I did try Meetup, all of those kind of other alternatives in the market at the time. And they didn't really work for me in the way that I wanted to, where I wanted to be able to do those things on the weekend, like going out for dinner, going to see my favorite band play, and those types of products didn't really fit into my lifestyle. And it didn't really make it easy for you to build those authentic connections. I think particularly, how we've built Butter is around building that frequency and that proximity of connection by actually meeting over the things you already love doing. And with those alternatives, I didn't really have that opportunity. Our tagline is invent yourself. So we're not, an app. We don't want to be a friendship app. We're a lifestyle companion where you can actually create the life that you want and become the person you want through connection. What if you want to discover a new hobby? How can you actually do that with the people who want to join you? Like that's the problem we're solving. So in that sense, we're not necessarily, a platform just for people who are experiencing disconnection. It's kind of, for those people who might have that really niche interest that they love, that they want to share.
So this isn't your first rodeo in the social app space. You built a couples friendship app before. So tell me, did it take off? And what did you learn from that experience?
We never got to the point of launching. So we, at the time, spent a ridiculous amount of money engaging developers to build the product. And we weren't even building a mobile app. We were building a web platform, which is insane to even think about now as kind of the use case for it. You would never kind of go and log onto a website to find new friends as a couple. But the premise, was always there. So obviously, my personal experience, I kind of always had this concept ticking around in my head of how can we actually make it easier for people to build new friendships and find new community. That execution was wrong for a variety of reasons. The target market was tiny. The need wasn't quite right either. And then obviously how we were building it as well, it wasn't the right approach to actually build a solid solution. We were spending so much time getting the product right.
Yeah.
And that was something that I took particularly into Butter and made that active shift into, shipping faster and just getting something into the market to see if it works. We spent a lot of time just, trying to build the product in the right way and get it probably more ready than an MVP needs to be.
Yeah.
And then obviously add to that, working with offshore developers, things take a little bit longer. They're not a full-time team, they're a contracted team. You potentially, the rates are cheaper than doing something onshore, but the amount of time that you spend iterating, you kind of, end up spending the same amount anyway.
Yeah. Anecdote in terms of learning about how to develop, build, and ship very quickly.
Yeah.
And also probably a cautionary tale for anyone thinking of working, relying too much on like offshore developers. Okay, so before you wrote a single line of code, how did you think about testing demand at large?
Once I did the initial research, articles, that kind of classic secondary research, I then decided to look at surveying a lot of potential customers. Actually put out a TikTok video when we had like 100 followers. It was a very simple video, me talking to camera. I'm looking to meet a group of these types of people within this age bracket. I want you to give me 15 minutes of your time, talk to me about disconnection, friendship, community, comment below if you're interested. And I ended up doing about 80 to 100 interviews from that. There were a mix of over the phone, coffee interviews, and online interviews as well.
Oh, cool.
And that really gave me the depth of research I needed to understand, across the full scope of the market, how people are thinking about the problem, how they're solving it for themselves, and how are they, wanting it to be solved if they are. And so that was a really good foundation for me to say, okay, cool. I learned a lot from it, particularly with the difference between how men and women think about disconnection and solve it. It's night and day, which is super interesting. And then from there, put together a rough MVP that was just a prototype.
Okay, you have to tell me. So how do men and women view disconnection differently?
Yeah. Women, from the research that we've done and a lot of the commentary you see online, women are more open about their challenges with disconnection. And I think, one of the things we're addressing, disconnection is kind of like, what dating apps were 10 years ago, where there was this stigma around it. And, you might have mentioned that you were on a dating app to find a partner and people would have been like, oh my God, you desperate loser. I can't believe you're going online to find a partner. Like, that's what it was initially.
Okay,
and I think men kind of take on that kind of emotional association of the stigma and are less willing to speak about it and actively try and solve it to an extent. I don't want to put everyone in the same bucket. Taking that into account as well to kind of consider how we build the product and how we market the product over time so that we can solve this for both sides of the market. We don't just want to solve this for women because men need it as well. We just need to make sure that we're building it and approaching it in the right way that makes sense for them.
We chatted briefly before this, and you're well above this benchmark. But how did you get your first 100 users?
It was a big focus on digital and on content, unsurprisingly. I feel like, the core customer that Butter serves being that 18 to 35-year-old men or woman, we needed to kind of appear where they were and show up, on socials, in content, and really drive it organically that way. So I did that from a brand perspective, but also from a founder perspective, which at the time and still is my nightmare fuel. I absolutely hate creating founder content and appearing in it, but it must be done. And I'm much better now than I was like a year ago even.
That's actually a sentiment that I hear so much. Like, it's like one of those, I think it's like appearing on social media has become this thing where you have to do it, but everyone's just like, oh, like, I wish that there was some privacy in my life.
Exactly. But, coming back to the problem itself, I think it's really important to see, there is actually a person behind this, and you can associate that you're not the only one going through it because this founder is, and that's why they're building it. And for Butter, that was, an important kind of foundation to lay to make people more inclined to actually join the platform and get involved. So that was really important for Butter, and I'm, getting better at it now, but it's not my favorite thing to do, unfortunately. So we bootstrapped Butter. So I was a solo founder at the time.
Yeah.
So I was outsourcing the dev. I taught myself to code and then was like, Sam, you're insane if you're going to go through that learning curve while also building the entire company on top of that. Design it and outsource it. So that's what I did at the time. I still design the product now. And so we're spending, a majority of the cash that I had in the offshore dev. And so then we had to get a little bit more creative with the marketing side. I think I had $500 to launch. Not much by any means. Paid media is very scalable now, which is great, but it wasn't going to get us very far. So I really had to kind of go hard with the organic side and build that kind of social proofing element of the business, which worked really well. And then, get some small moments of paid activity through paid media, predominantly on socials, to kind of bolster that. But yeah, it was really that organic drive initially.
How long did it take you to get the first 100 users?
Given the nature of the product, it's not like ecom where you can just turn it on, it's live, and just get a couple of kind of orders ticking through. Because we're all about offline connection, we needed to actually have a certain number of users already kind of on the wait list to be able to launch. So we'd had those 100 users before we went live. We didn't start marketing until maybe a week before we went live. So in terms of paid activity, so we'd had that probably within, maybe the first 2 weeks of actually going hard with building the wait list. Up until then, it was a little bit of a test and learn with, what type of messaging is working, what type of content is working. And we'd started to build out that wait list from there. But once we were actually like, all right, we're going live, it honestly didn't take long, which is great, and a great proof point to say like, okay, maybe there is, a really strong need here, and how we're talking about it is the right way.
You've mentioned that you've worked on butter for a while now. So when did you have that, okay, like we're ready to ship it moment? And was that more of a call based on metrics, user feedback, or just a gut feeling that, this is a really good MVP already?
So, I suppose the time that I was thinking about butter, there was a really long lead up. I was working full-time in corporate at the time. So it was kind of started as a passion project, and coming out of, the first time I'd thought about something like this, I was like, all right, you need to kind of bake it a little bit more before you go to market. And so it very much was this thing that I did for a couple of hours a week, when I had time. And so really, once I started working on it, I quit my job to start freelancing to give myself 2 to 3 days a week to work on butter, and then went full time at the start of this year. So really, it was probably about a year a bit over a year that we've been live now, that I've been working on it kind of as an actual business. And I knew that we kind of needed to get something into market quickly. Having learned from my previous experience, I knew that I wanted to ship quickly and iterate. It didn't need to be this perfectly polished, finished product, which was a very hard kind of understanding for me to come to, being a perfectionist. I was like, but it's not ready. It's like, we'll just get something out and kind of prove the hypothesis of, will people post plans on the internet that they want to do with strangers in person? Like, let's just prove that, because if we're going to spend all this money, that's the cool product. And if people don't want to do that, we need to rethink everything. And so we launched MVP that I absolutely hate now thinking about it, but at the time it was a solid MVP. We launched that just to Melbourne, but just to the soberish community within Melbourne. So that group of, young mid-20s people who either were thinking about not drinking, or they'd recently stopped drinking, and wanted to do kind of things in their life that didn't revolve around alcohol.
Yeah.
Which was very timely last year when we went to market with that. So for me, it was more of a gut feel around, all right, that one core thing that we needed to do: create a plan, post a plan, have that shown to the relevant people to get guests to join the plan. Does the app do that? Yes. All right, let's get it to market, see what the sentiment is and how it performs, and then we can iterate from there. So it was definitely more of a gut feel. And, I think a lot of founders can kind of get really focused on making it this perfect product.
Yeah.
But you can sink a lot of money into it, and you can sink a lot of time into it. And so figure out what that one single core thing is that you're trying to prove, ship that, and then iterate from there. And that's what we did.
Super cool. And one thing I picked up slightly is that like you seem to launch for a very specific audience, which is really interesting as well, because I think when you think about this big problem disconnection, you target so many people. You end up like with a massive market, right? But it really is so important when you first launch to figure out like who will be most inclined to do this like immediately.
Yeah.
To be a really great testing ground to prove the point of will people actually post plans.
Yeah.
And they did, so that's great.
Tick.
And okay, so everyone always talks about how much it sucks being kind of the non-technical commercial founder. To flip the script a little bit, why do you actually think that this is your superpower?
Interesting question. Honestly, I mean, for this type of product, particularly B2C, it's a distribution game. For me, coming in as a commercial founder, I felt that I actually did have the upper hand with my content background, with my brand marketing background, that I could go in and find the way that we actually needed to deliver it, position it, build the brand, and take it to market that would work for this type of product. You can build a product, but who's going to use it if you can't see it out and get people to hear about it?
Yeah. This is actually a very timely question because this entire week I've been thinking a lot about like what are the missing skill sets in 2025? And there are a lot of really great technical tools to help you learn code very quickly, code and ship very quickly, and even deploy and test your software. And I think a lot of people are building really interesting infrastructure and things like that. But there seems to be just a lack of like, okay, like the market's so competitive. So like, where do I go in? And it really takes a very special kind of commercially minded person to figure out like where's the entry into the market, like what segment am I gonna carve my way through through all the noise. And I think especially for something like this, D2C, being commercial, being brand oriented, and kind of doing a lot of the product design work, which is a very fundamental portion of it, is super helpful. So it is your superpower. And if you think about what's been the most valuable lesson that you've learned as a founder, the one that you wish someone had told you earlier in your journey.
I mean, I feel like we've spoken about it now, but my answer was going to be around shipping and iterating.
Yeah.
And also learning, like figure it out.
Yeah.
I think particularly as starting as a solo founder, you're not going to have a lot of cash. Things are more expensive than you think they are. You need to be creative and, you know, be able to have that hustle and just learn and figure it out and teach yourself. I taught myself to code. I built the website myself. I designed the product. I don't have a background in tech, but I figured all of that out. You know, I built the brand. I've designed the logo. Like I did all of that myself.
I think being scrappy is so important. And really just doing absolutely everything that you can.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're in your 30s now. So you've seen the full chaos of like 20-something friendships. If you could give one piece of advice about making and keeping friends, what would they be?
It really is an effort thing. Like it's not easy. A lot of people say like, oh, I wish I had friends. I wish I had more of these types of friends and X, Y, Z, but they won't actually take the steps to put in that effort, put in the time, you know, organize those catch-ups again, talk to them on a deeper level. I think I was watching a TikTok last week on conversational chemistry, and it's like it's around how, you know, people can actually build a conversation, connect with people more deeply than just like fact collecting. Like I know how old you are and what career you have and where you live. Cool, that tells me nothing about you essentially on the deeper level that you need to actually build a friendship. And so being able to structure a conversation in a way where you can let the other person speak and get more information out of them, and that's where you actually get to know someone. But that takes effort and, you know, a concerted effort. And I think a lot of people maybe just want the friends without necessarily wanting to put the effort in. And I think that's probably one thing, particularly as you get into your 20s, where everyone starts to go on their different path. People get into relationships, you're not in one. People relocate, you don't. Like, it's a lot harder to maintain that connection. And I think you need that concerted effort to constantly check in and, touch base and organize that catch up and, stay in touch and wish them well for whatever thing they're doing. And that's how you maintain that over time.
Okay, on the other side of connections and relationships, so what about one piece of advice about choosing the right partner for the long haul?
I have the best partner ever, so
Yes.
this is a good one for me.
So you can say it.
Yeah.
So you have the best advice. Okay, great.
I was single for 5-6 years, a decent amount of time, kind of in between my last relationship and this one. And I honestly make a list of your non-negotiables. It sounds strange, but I had gotten to the point where, I was going on dates and I would instantly kind of know they're not my kind of person. I'm not into them for these reasons. And I was like, okay, well, like, what does that actually mean? And putting it down on paper, I ended up having a list of 8 things. And it's not like, it shouldn't be a list like, they're tall and, they're attractive, like, cool, that means nothing. Like, on a values-driven level and on, think about the life you want to have, what type of partner will fit into that life, create the list based on that. So I had a list of 8 things, and I'm actually not kidding. I wrote that list in my notes app, and 2 weeks later matched with my now fiance on Hinge. And instantly after that first date, I was like, done, sold, tick, everything, tick, 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 tick. Wow. I didn't find that list until maybe 6 months into when we'd started dating. And I looked at it and I was like, oh my God, that is my partner. And I showed him and he was like, yeah, that's me to a T. But it took me, going on all of the dates and meeting a lot of different types of people as well. I think that's one other thing. People can get very set into the type of person that they think they want to date. It's like, okay, well, you haven't met, you're kind of dating this, corporate, more serious guy. You haven't met the creative. You haven't met, the XYZ. You need to be able to experience that to then know for sure the type that you want. So do that, write the list and stick to the list.
This is like some TikTok manifestations.
I know, and I hate that people are, oh my God, manifestation, but I think it's more just clarity and being able to like articulate what it is that you want. And I think it takes a while to get there. You can't kind of go in, the second you're single and it's like, this is the type of person that I want and this is what I'm looking for. It takes time to understand that. It takes meeting people to understand that.
So where do you see butter fitting into people's lives in the long run?
We have massive goals and a massive vision. So we want to create the world where every in-person interaction is built on butter. So no matter where you went or the things that you did, you would always be able to find that community that you wanted. Like, if you thought about that for a second, what would you do in your life? You'd move cities more. You'd take that job. You'd try that new thing. You'd meet that new person because you know that you would always have this foundation of this community and these friends that you could always have wherever you went. And I think that's the unlock that we want to build, actually be that lifestyle destination for anyone at any point in their life to be able to build that community and create the life that they want and invent themselves, as our tagline says. We're powering that offline internet, and I think now it is really a very timely topic with AI and, the shift in post-COVID and how we want to connect, and Gen Z actively rejecting the doom scroll and wanting, seeking those kind of pre-digital experiences. So the time really is ripe now. And we want to be that kind of, that infra that powers that for everyone everywhere.
I really enjoy the vision. I think that's very beautiful. And digital connections can never really replace being with someone physically, doing an experience that you both enjoy. And I also think moving around in your 20s and your 30s, even later, every time you move around, you get to invent yourself. And that is something that not a lot of people talk about, but I've personally found in my experience to be really rewarding. And I hope with Butter, everyone feels a bit more empowered to do that. And that's an incredible mission and a goal. Okay, Sam, I really enjoyed our conversation, and thank you for coming on Founders in Motion.
Thanks for having me.
That's a wrap. If you like this episode, please hit the subscribe button. It helps us bring on more awesome guests, level up production, and drop new series you'll want to watch. See you in 2 weeks.